Morning, Dan and Amy. Text from Ann B. Davis's bowling ball.
Ugh,
Perhaps, yeah, he's very
love
funny.
his wife too. Good.
Yeah, good peeps. They were on the trip with us to Punta Cana. He texted that perhaps it was a bad idea for Greg Gianforte. He's the Republican candidate for Congress in Montana. Today's special election for the seat vacated by Ryan Zinke, who became Trump's Interior Secretary. Perhaps it was a bad idea for Gianforte to hire Bobby the Brain Heenan as his campaign manager. And that is in reference to a rather unusual confrontation and resolution of confrontation between a candidate for Congress and a reporter from The Guardian on the night before an election.
And what you thought
we'll
about
talk to you about that later.
Yeah, but there's not going to be time. I'm just curious if you have the act
Speak
right
with
now.
Shane, please.
But you don't.
Sick and tired of you guys. The last guy that came here, you did the same thing. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. The last guy did the same thing. You were the Guardian.
Yes, and you just broke my glasses.
The last guy did the same damn thing.
You just body slammed me and broke my glasses.
Get the hell out of here.
You'd like me to get the hell out of here, I'd also like to call the police. Can I get you guys' names? He just body slammed me.
You can call me Lex Luger.
I hope all members of Congress aren't that jittery when we ask them about the health care bill.
In his private
the
sector
CBO.
business, Mr. Gianforte has an HR department to handle those personnel matters.
Okay.
Keep him separated from those who he gets a bit short with.
Well, in his defense, they claim this morning that the reporter, Jacobs from The Guardian, was forcing his recorder too close to his face, didn't like it. That's why he took him down. That he was the instigator.
Not
the
great.
Reporter from The Guardian.
Not great spin. For more on this, a Republican who is currently in
Don't
the
make
House,
him mad.
in
Don't
the-
make him mad.
in House Majority. He is a gentle soul. He is
Okay.
a peaceful pluralist. He uses his words and his intellect, not his fists. And we'd like to keep him in the majority in the House, but it seems like the Republicans are making that a dicey prospect. He is Congressman Peter Roskam, Republican from Illinois' 6th District out there in the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Great to be with you this morning. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. And a rather unfortunate incident ahead of today's special election in Montana, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say so. Hey, if you're a member of or you're a candidate, you've got a lot more to lose than the media does. So be cool, lower the wattage. If you're uptight, walk away. I just don't get that at all. There's no explaining it and there's no defending it.
Yeah. Well, on to some serious matters about the House's work in general, particularly you on Ways and Means. Where do we stand with tax reform and translating what Trump proposed into policy?
Here's where we are. There's been the three of us have talked a lot over the past few months about the blueprint that the House has. So it's a good plan, and there's some controversial parts, but it's growth oriented and it's good stuff. There's been a commitment that's been made by the part of the House majority, the Senate majority, and the administration to ultimately introduce one piece of legislation. So what you're not going to see is you're not going to see a House version of actual text, a Senate version, and an administration version. This is all really good news because it forces us to work together, work out the differences and so forth, and to come up with an agenda and ultimately a plan that does a couple of things, that creates real growth in the economy, and this is something that the president campaigned on, and that is far simpler than what we have right now, deals with this problem of companies leaving, blocking out their manufacturing and so forth. And ultimately, I would argue it's really important that we make it so that it's permanent. Those are sort of the parameters. Different ideas. We had the Secretary of the Treasury into the Ways and Means Committee yesterday for a hearing. He was weighing in on things that he likes, he doesn't like, and so forth. But that's all to say there's a lot of momentum and good direction, but we still have a long way to go, actually.
But just on the horizon, is at least the intention to get something done before the end of the year, perhaps even before the August recess?
Here's the thing. This is my prediction. This either happens in 2017, that is tax reform, or it's not going to happen, I think. You know, it doesn't get any better. We're basically, our tax code is an island that's dissolving underneath us, and we're still sure-footed enough to be able to jump to the next place that we need to be. But if we wait too much longer, if it gets into 2018 and this thing hasn't ripened to the point where, you know, we've got something really good, then it will get away from us, and it will have been a shame. So it's 2017. I'm not as comfortable making an August prediction. I think August is unlikely, but 2017, in my view, is the year.
So CBO score came out. They claimed that 23 million people will be without health care, and that would jump to 51 million would be uninsured by the year 2026. Is the CBO always accurate?
No, they're not always accurate. I mean, they were off wildly on Obamacare predictions. They were off wildly on the cost of what's known as Medicare Part D. Here's the larger point, though, and I think this is sort of the argument that gets lost. When you don't force people to do things, then they're not going to do things that they don't want to do. So the idea is people are not forced, they're not mandated, they're not punished by not getting coverage, and so some of them are going to make a decision not to have it. And I think this rhetoric of it being torn away from folks and so forth, it's a mischaracterization. But look, the hyperbole about the health care debate is reached really a new level. I mean, I've just not heard so much over-characterization. And the analogy is, think about how hyped up everybody was getting about what was going to be happening in Wisconsin when they were going to put conservative principles in. You know, the school buses were not going to run. Nurses were not going to show up. And, you know, one thing after another. But the conservatives in Wisconsin hung in there. They said, you know, we think these good things are going to be happening. They implemented these things, and Wisconsin's doing really well today. So the drama will settle out. We've just got to be consistent and move forward and enact these good policies, because the status quo, again, Obamacare, what a disaster. Health and Human Services just published data that was collected during the Obama administration, and it's become clear that health care premiums have doubled since 2013. So nobody's doing well under the status quo.
You're 105% increase. 105% increase in 4 years since 2013. That's the HHS report that you're referring to, Congressman Roskam, and it's worth reminding people as part of the pushback of, you know, what has happened over the last 4 years as the D.C. press corps wants to focus them on just what's happening right now. It's very much like what they do at the state level in Chicago and Springfield, which is to say the state just was incorporated and our problems just started when Rauner was elected and inaugurated in 2015. We had no problems till then. That's kind of the same game they're playing with healthcare. Yeah,
for sure. And now Humana and Aetna have both announced that they're out of the individual market in 2018. But 3 weeks ago, the state of Iowa announced that over 90 of their counties have no insurer in the individual market. If you're in my congressional district, if you're living in the 6th district and you're in Lake or McHenry County, you only have one insurance company that's offering a product in the individual market. So this is in a death spiral. And, you know, you can do one of two things. You can let it crash, which ironically, the designers, the architects, I would argue, of the Affordable Care Act, they designed a system that was not to last. They designed a system that would crash into a single-payer system. But the strategic flaw that they made when they were designing it is it wouldn't even last long enough to get into a single-payer system. And we've got an unbelievable opportunity to reclaim this, shift the momentum, and move it back into a more patient-oriented health plan. And that's where we're basically at a tipping point.
But in response to the CBO numbers yesterday, Mark Meadows, your colleague who heads up the Freedom Caucus in the House, suggested he may be willing to add more money in for persons with pre-existing conditions for their coverage. Is there a concern in the House that you're going to have some anxiety-ridden senators, Republican senators, wet themselves and scuttle this replace?
Look, here's what we can't do. We cannot allow a good bill to be just, you know, in the quicksand of the U.S. Senate. There's no excuses. There's plenty of Republican senators who've got to get their heads together and get their acts together and come up with a plan. And for, God bless them, but, the number of senators who are professionals at telling you what they won't do. They basically say, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. Well, that's all fine and well and good. What are you for? What's your proposal? How do you mitigate against this disaster in light of a conservative mandate, a party that has articulated its opposition to Obamacare and its proposal to move into a patient-centered healthcare model? What is your proposal?
And excuse not to interrupt, but and by what date? Because isn't it June 21st that insurance companies have to present their 2018 rates and benefits?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the date certain. I take it at face value if you're telling me that. But to your point, that there's a shelf life to this.
Yes.
And and you know how this works. You can over-contemplate something, and there's nobody here that's saying be cavalier about it or don't read bills and take time. And the House bill is not orthodoxy, and if there's changes that need to be made, great. Then make the changes, make the proposals, come up with enough votes in the Senate, and get it out, and let's get about this. But I think most people that I represent say, look, get something done, get these premiums so that they're under control, keep the safety net in terms of pre-existing conditions and these things where we've had a national consensus on it, but enough of the hand-wringing, start moving stuff.
So President Obama, his big promise was if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Clearly, that was not true. What is President Trump's big promise?
Well, I think he said a couple of things, and this is part of the way that President Trump communicates. But one of the things that I think what he was really trying to say is we got to get these costs down, and the subtext of all that is you lower premiums and you lower deductibles, and you're going to make it more available to more people. And I think, look, there's a general understanding. We all want people to have access to coverage. The question is, how do you do it? And do you do it by a government mandate that punishes people and says if you don't take this product, then you're going to get fined by the Internal Revenue Service? No, that hasn't worked. We propose something that's different. And we propose, hey, let's make sure that the marketplace creates a product that people want and that they've got the flexibility to meet the needs of their own families. And if we do that, it creates a lot more stability, and then we can get along to deal with some of these other significant challenges.
And now on the spend side, Trump has introduced a budget that is, you're talking about hyperbole on healthcare, that has been called an act of cruelty by Hillary Clinton, that one Philadelphia bishop called ethnic cleansing of black and brown people. Where do you stand on the broad outlines of what the administration proposed on the spend side?
So the administration is trying to get us into the right direction. Here's part of the challenge of the administration's proposal. He's taken Medicare essentially off the table. Medicare, as we know, is really where the money is, and that's based on all the boomers retiring, 10,000 boomers every 24 hours for the next 17 years? So to take that off the table in terms of reforms and changes that need to be made leaves a lot less flexibility. So everybody's looking at it. I've got some individual concerns, proposals that really cut Great Lakes cleanup funding, I don't think is the sharpest move. But that said, they're trying to make a proposal that's commitment with a philosophy of balancing and not spending money. But when it all comes down to it, we've got to get these debt questions under control. And I'll tell you this, we know it better than anybody here in Illinois because of what we're living through. And the notion of avoiding debt, putting it off, not dealing with it, or adding to it in a cavalier way, it just obviously doesn't end well. So the country doesn't. The country cannot afford to make the mistakes that Illinois has made.
And then quickly, before we let you go, the IRS commissioner, I'm going to ask you about it. What's the status of Mr. Koskinen, and what has the administration said to the letter you sent saying, let's find somebody else?
We haven't heard anything. So this is all within, there's only two people who are at the Internal Revenue Service that serve as at the pleasure of the president. In other words, they're political appointees. One is John Koskinen, and one is the general counsel, whoever that is. Those are the only two political appointees. So President Trump has the full authority to remove the IRS commissioner. We've asked him to do it. So far, he's not responded to the Ways and Means Committee on that request.
All right. He is Congressman Peter Roskam, Republican from the 6th District in the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.